this session, we're going to be looking at DD310, which is Counselling and Forensic Psychology, one of the new third-level psychology modules. And I'm joined by Andreas Vossler. Andreas, thank you for joining me to tell us about this module. It sounds so interesting and exciting.
Yeah, thanks for having me here, and yeah, I'm very happy to talk about DD310 because we are equally excited about it because we think it's a really great new module we've produced.
Lovely. Now, we've got some widgets that we're going to ask you about. So which age is most likely to experience violence and victimisation? And when was homosexuality removed from the World Health Organization's International Classification of Diseases? And you're going to tell us why some of this is relevant. But firstly, let's just take a look at the module and talk a little bit about what it's all about, because this, again, is a very interdisciplinary module. You're looking at 3 different areas of which really appeal to students.
Yeah, so I mean, the module is, as you said, a very interdisciplinary module. So we have 2 kind of fields or disciplines, which one is counseling and psychotherapy, and the other one is forensic psychology. And initially you might think, well, how can they come together in a way? But when you study the module or when you look into the module, there are so many fascinating and interesting intersections between counseling and therapy. And forensic psychology. So, for example, working therapeutically in a forensic setting, like in a prison, or if you look at issues around sex and sexuality and how they're seen from a forensics perspective, versus a kind of a counseling or therapeutic perspective, to give just 2 examples of topics we have there. So it's really great, I mean, to have the chance to investigate those topics. So counseling and forensic psychology, and the subtitle is investigating crime and therapy. So it's really interesting to look at those intersections and the topics that are, at the intersection of crime and therapy and counseling and forensic psychology.
Now, we thought it would be nice to sort of talk about some of these themes because they're so interesting. And so let's just get the admin over with at the beginning. Now, you can find out at Study at the OU all about the basics of this and indeed all the other modules. But broadly, Andreas, what's included when students sign up?
So level 3 module, 60 credits. Included is, as students are probably used with the OU, it's a module textbook. It's not yet published. It's coming out at the end of May, end of this month. But I brought with me the cover, so you can already see how the cover is going to look like. So it's called Mad or Bad, a Critical Approach to Counseling and Forensic Psychology.
Excellent.
And so textbook, then we have the VLE. We have 5 blocks on the module. The VLE has a lot of interactive elements in it. So we have activities, we have texts on the VLE, we have voices you hear from practitioners, from people from the other side, like mental health users, for example, perpetrators, victims of crime. So a lot of material on the VLE as well. And then, of course, in terms of tuition, we have online tuition blended with face-to-face tutorials. It's kind of a standard approach we are taking there. So it's a package, a really nice package of different teaching material and activities, and teaching in terms of online chat rooms and group and cluster groups, but also face-to-face tutorials.
Important, and especially because I guess you get such a broad range of students. It would be really exciting to be able to capitalise on some of that diversity from the student population when you're talking about some of these issues in tutorials. Tell us how it's assessed then. So
we have 5 TMAs on the module. And what is really important to know about DD310, it's a very applied module. So when we thought about assessment and the assessment strategy, we had different things in mind. We wanted to have assessments that are innovative. So whilst we have some classic essays as well on the module, we have other assessment types which are quite innovative, but they are designed to, in terms of employability and in terms of preparing students for either a career in a forensic setting or in a therapeutic or counseling setting, that are really kind of relevant for those kind of employability skills. So, for example, the first TMA is about a critical evaluation of a media coverage of crime and therapy. Then the second one, is about social cultural issues. So we provide students with a case study, and then they look into how social cultural issues play out. So if students have seen the animation we just showed in the break, that's kind of the social cultural issue kind of topic we have there. Then we have a presentation. So students are asked in a TMA to prepare a presentation for lay people. And the fourth one is the formulation report. So that's something in therapeutic practice a therapist has to do for a client. It's about how do we make sense of client problems? So what do we think, which factors have played a role? And that's kind of putting that together in a formulation report. So that's hugely kind of relevant for employability skills if students learn to do that. Then the fifth one is a more classical kind of essay. And then we have an EMA at the end of the module, which is kind of overarching, looking at the module content. But I mean, what's really interesting is that from the very beginning of the module production, we were really very keen on getting student input and student engagement into the production process. So we did set up a website, which is called madorbad.org. From the very beginning of the production process. And on that website, we talk about the production. So we have a blog, for example, where we report a bit about the production process. But we also had a forum on that website, and we asked students questions about, what kind of, for example, assessment strategy, what kind of assessment types would they like to have? Would they rather want to have an EMA or an exam at the end of the module? And we got some really good kind of feedback from students with really interesting reasons why they would want one or the other. That we've chosen an EMA has to do with the student feedback we got. Okay. So was a really good thing. And we also, sorry.
Yeah. Oh no, I was going to say you also got ideas from them, didn't you? You asked them for images and things. Yeah, so you were crowdsourcing.
Yeah, that was another thing we did on the website, on the Madorbad website. So we asked students to submit artwork. So artwork they've done around the topic of mad or bad, because that's the kind of topic that runs through the module. And we were kind of overwhelmed by the kind of submissions we got. We got a lot of submissions, and we are using the student artwork for one thing is what we do with them is in every chapter of the book, there is now one artwork from a student or from a staff member. We are also asked staff member to submit artwork. And also on the VLE, we have some artwork around Mad or Bad submitted by students. I have some examples here, so I can show some of those. So as I said, it's all around the topic of mad or bad. So this is one. Or another example. So both of those will be covered in the book as well. So they're in the book. And the book is externally published, so some students got their artwork in an externally published book. Wow. So it was really inspiring to see that artwork and to see how they felt about that topic and what kind of artwork they submitted around that. So.
Excellent. No, wonderful. And a great thing to add to your CV as well. Andreas, we have two questions on the widgets, which we ask people to vote on. Would you like to see them? And would you like to see whether the one about statistically, which group is most likely to statistically experience violence and victimisation? Or shall we take a look at the World Health Organization's classification of diseases?
If we first have a look at the age-related one.
The age-related, excellent. So let's see what people said at home. 62% said young people, 23 between 50 and 30, and older than 50 is 15%. Is that what you'd expected people to reply?
It's interesting because it looks like OU students are very smart and already know a lot about kind of issues we wanted to cover on the module. So this kind of question is related to social cultural issues and how age is perceived in society and in the criminal justice system, in the mental health kind of system. And a lot of people would think victims of crimes, what comes to mind? Yes, elderly people who are fragile, who are kind of vulnerable, like elderly people at home who are kind of burglars break in or so. But actually, and that's what's kind of shown here in the statistics as well. Actually, it's the young people who are most vulnerable in terms of violent crime. So in terms of statistics, they are most likely to become a victim of violent crime, young people.
So this really relates to this whole idea about the social construction of crime and also of therapy.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really, because that's a really important issue and topic we cover in the module. And as a lot of psychology Open University modules, we have a very critical approach, looking very critically into discourses that are in society. So one message to get across in the module is we really cannot just label people as mad or bad, which still happens quite a lot in the criminal justice system or in the mental health system, that people are kind of individualized, that we say, oh, this person is mad or this person is bad or even evil if it's a very serious crime. And we want to get a message across. It's really important when we look at crime and also mental health issues to see the very complex picture, to see that there are a lot of factors. There are psychological factors, there are kind of social factors, there is some law issues around there are media representations that play a role, diagnostic criteria that are applied. So it's a really complex picture, and it's far too easy just to label someone as mad or bad. That's why with the book title we have a question mark around that mad or bad, because we will really look in the module then into these different factors. So there's a whole block where we look into, for example, race. How does race play out in terms of how people are treated by the police, treated by the criminal justice system? So, for example, if you look at stop and search statistics, it's clear that black people are 3 times more likely to be stopped and searched. There was talk about institutional racism some time ago, Stephen Lawrence case, and so on. This is the kind of how race plays out, also in mental health. That
sex and sexuality hasn't, been let off the hook. We asked our audience about when they thought homosexuality was removed. Should we see what they said?
Yeah, let's have a look.
So 50% now have said 1992. 1981 at 29% and 1967 at 21%.
Yeah. Again, it's really nice to see how well informed your students are, because it's the right answer. Was it 52%?
50,
so 50%. 1992. But you might think, if you look at that, that's quite late.
Well, it is, yeah.
Because you would think homosexuality in our days should be something that's, just a normal, or what is normal, but kind of a way of sexuality.
So it's all about how things are categorised and also treated, that's sort of a central tenet then throughout these various case studies, I guess, that you're using in the module. Yeah. I wondered, because we're nearly out of time, Andreas, if you could talk us a little bit about some of the forensic sides of things. So the challenges of working in forensic settings and also treatments and therapeutic approaches in terms of the aspects that are covered within the module. So firstly, about the challenges of working in a forensic setting then. You use case studies that are sort of coming through, and again, like you mentioned earlier, different voices of people who are out there doing things. So it's very, very topical and very relevant, and also very applied.
Yeah, that's right. So in terms of what we have in terms of the therapeutic work, we have we call it therapy in action. So we have you could say it's a therapeutic enactment. We have therapists, real therapists, experienced therapists working with actors who play client families or individual client. So students on the module can see the therapist working with those clients, and afterwards they can see the therapist talking about their work and why they did certain things, why they used certain interventions. And in terms of working in a forensic setting, there are, of course, issues like risk and security and safety that are much more complex in a forensic setting than in the usual therapeutic practice, or consent or voluntary participation in therapy. That's not always the case in a forensic setting. People might feel under pressure to attend to therapy, or disclosure might be very, very difficult for someone in a prison to really talk openly about their mental health issues or distress they have, and there might be a culture in a prison where you mustn't show any weaknesses. So it's a very difficult kind of environment for therapeutic work. So much so that some people say forensic setting might even be a counter-therapeutic environment, because if you look at the agendas of a prison and a forensic setting, it's quite the opposite or different from a therapeutic agenda. So a therapeutic agenda would be improving and promoting well-being, whereas as a forensic agenda would be protecting the public, or perhaps punishment or rehabilitation, but not so much the individual well-being of inmates. So we really explore in the module how is it then still possible to work therapeutically and to help people and who are in a forensic setting, and the different challenges and specific issues there.
Excellent. And then you're having these 4 approaches as well. So you spend a week on each of these. So we've got attachment-based CBT, systemic, and mindfulness DBA. So there are a lot of different ways, I guess, that people would get a brief glimpse about some of the key principles of those therapeutic interventions.
Yeah, that's right. So it's a really basic introduction into each of these approaches. And the good thing is, as we have 4 of them, students can really compare the different approaches and can see what are the strengths and perhaps the weaknesses, or the things that can be done with the different approaches, and how do they apply those approaches in a forensic setting, because that's the specific issues we are looking into. So yeah, I mean, and we've chosen some of the most common therapeutic approaches, so cognitive behavioral therapy, systemic therapy, mindfulness, as you already mentioned, and attachment-based, which is really relevant for a lot of perpetrators or people in prisons, because whilst they have committed often serious crimes, they themselves have been victims often in their youth or childhood, and have been sexual or abused or have suffered horrible kind of injuries, mental health injuries, if you want.
Oh, Andreas, thank you so much. It sounds like a brilliant module. And one of the things I think that's so impressive and that will appeal to students is that it is so diverse. You know, whether you're interested in law or forensic settings or counselling, psychology, there would definitely be something that you probably would be least likely to know about. And also, I guess you're going to have such a nice pool of students who've got experiences from those different pathways to bounce ideas off. So you would really be able to learn from each other, as well as about new therapies and ways of thinking, and also the content.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's something we already kind of felt in the module team, because we have had different academics from a more forensic side and more from a therapeutic side. And I think we learned a great deal from each other. And I think exactly the same thing will happen within the student community in that module, because we will have psychology students, but we will also have students from other qualifications, and perhaps more from a criminology or from a kind of a forensic
law even, yeah.
or law even. And I think they can really learn a lot from each other by looking at to the other side, and how people from the other side see things and the perspectives from the other side. So that's one huge kind of advantage on that module.
Andreas Vossler, thank you very, very much. Well, to find out more about this and other modules, do check out Study at the OU. We're going to have a short video break. We're going to show a small part of the Making of Wales Part 1 video. We don't have time to play it all, but you can check that out on the resources page on the website, because our next session is going to be A329, The Making of Welsh History. So I will see you very soon.